Welcome and thank you all for joining us today for our Winncom Technologies panel discussion on BEAD 2.0, Ready, Set, Grant, BEAD's new roles and Winncom's reimbursable grant writing program. Here to represent from Winncom Technologies is our very own VP of Engineering, Kyle Barnes, and Fiber Product Manager and BEAD expert, Alex Cernick. If anyone has any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to add them into the chat and they'll be addressed at the end of the session. Alex, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Dawn. As always, fantastic introduction. And then for those of you who have joined and about to join, thank you very much for your time. We've got a really good panel discussion today. So Kyle and myself will go through a couple of areas. So to kind of set the stage, what we're going to cover is the first section is BEAD's restructure overview. So on June 6th, the NTIA released a lot of changes in the BEAD program. So a lot of those are changes that restructure rules, regulations, scoring systems, introduction of tech neutral frameworks, what the upcoming bargain rounds are going to look like. So we'll provide details there. We'll provide some overviews, some state examples, and then we'll even get into what the ULFW challenge process even looks like. So from there, we'll kind of bring this full circle into Winncom's grant writing assistance program. So at a high level, we're going to talk about what this looks like, how we can help you from a consultative perspective, from an engineering and design perspective, and then what our grant writing assistance looks like from start to finish, highlighting our supply chain capabilities, and then we'll kind of end this with post-award compliancy. So this is a panel discussion, so it'll go back and forth a lot between Kyle and myself. What we would ask is hold your questions to the end. I would recommend asking them in the chat feature here, and we'll try to end this 10 to 15 minutes early at least. That way we can address any of your questions. Now, we'll also have contact information at the end of this, a general mailbox for BEAD, and then I've got my email there as well. I'm going to bring this up a lot of times as we talk, but timing is absolutely of the essence. All this is happening really, really fast. It's supposed to be submitted by the states by September 6th. So that gives them a really short window to open up pre-qualification, to open up applications. And ideally, before that happens, you want to have your network design already finalized. So
Alex, real quick, can you say that date one more time?
September 6th is when everything needs to be finalized by the states. And finalized means they've got to have their pre-qualification open for 7 days. Some of them are doing letters of intent instead of that. They then have for 7 days need to open up their application. They then need to go through, score those applications, and provide those subgrantees and their applications to the NTIA by September 6th. Now, we do suspect that a lot of states, they're not going to be ready. I can guess on a couple: Florida, Ohio, Idaho. I believe those states might look for some type of exemption or waiver that allows them to go past that deadline. But again, nothing is set in stone, nothing has been offered. So what we're looking at is reality of a very short period of time, really the next 45 days to get a lot of this done. So we'll expand as we go through this. That was a great question, Kyle, on your end. And again,
go ahead. I don't want to change your train of thought, but with all the changes on June 6th and the restructuring notice, what are the key changes that those that might be familiar with BEAD or familiar with the first iteration of BEAD, what does that restructure look like, and how does that impact WISP?
So you're asking the literally the billion-dollar question. So let's kind of walk into that. So one of the first things, and we'll start with the summary of restructure. I'm going to reference this slide, and I'm going to kind of angle a little bit to the screen. So on June 6th, they announced a whole bunch of different changes that happened. First of which, the shift from fiber first to tech neutral. So a lot of states, as you know, they were scoring applications based on a lot of different requirements. fiber first was a priority. So fiber was their preferred technology over fixed wireless, over LEO technologies. And a lot of states did two things. One, they got higher scores, and two, a lot of these you had your first wave that was only fiber. That happened in at least 10 different states. So the huge thing here is they really took a look at the passing costs, and they came back and they said, we want a tech neutral approach that gives us the lowest cost way of providing that 100 by 20 service to these eligible customers. So with that said, they've evened the playing field. Fiber is scored now the same as fixed wireless, as the same as satellite. So it's using the right solution based on really your unique applications. So I've done a lot of these. I use the term toolbox, and that's really come into play now, is picking the right technology. Now, the call I had just before this, it was a customer who already submitted an application for a state, and they were exclusively fiber. And their concern now is with the new ruling and BSL's cost being the ultimate driver, do they need to look at an alternative technology or alternative strategy to work with this? So they're not the first customer we've had this conversation. If you're on this line and you submitted applications and you're fiber only, the advice I'm giving is very simple, is you need to do an analysis of your BSLs. And I'm using $5,000 as kind of the litmus here. If you are $5,000 or higher on that passing cost, you should really pull those GPS coordinates and then give us a call, and we'll do a quick analysis to see, does fixed wireless make sense? Do you have
So
existing
Alex,
assets?
I see on here all previous awards, proposals, and rubrics voided.
Everything.
Is that true? And what can applicants do that maybe submitted applications prior? So you bring up a good point. Maybe you pull that data back, because a lot of people have spent a lot of time and resources putting together the application, the previous applications. And if I recall, some of the states actually awarded, but didn't actually award anything. They approved some of those. What can those applicants do? Can they just scrub the data and try to use that 5K number, or what's your suggestion there?
So if you've already submitted the application, you're ahead of the game. Now, yes, you are restarting, and part of this notice is everyone is now at the same start line, but you've already secured your letter of credit. You've already pulled your financials, audited or not audited. You've already completed your application. So let's say on average, I say it takes about 30 hours to put together an application. It's going to be a lot less on your end. It's just optimizing. And optimization, again, is using that 5K litmus number, reaching out to us, and let's see if we can leverage fixed wireless and your existing infrastructure to be able to come up with that hybrid type of approach. And again, tech neutral, and we'll get into a lot of what that actually means, but it could be a multitude of different technologies. So kind of moving over to high level, 40,000 foot overview. So fiber first approach is replaced with tech neutral. In addition to that, the way things were scored, as I mentioned previously, is you got points for fiber. You got points if you had stakeholder equity. So if you had referral letters from your congressman, from local businesses, all that was part of it. There were DEI requirements and DEI scoring. There was environmental scoring as well. All that's gone. They're only looking at one aspect of this, is what is the cost per passing, and they're looking at that at a project area level. So unless, and there's only one caveat here, unless you're 15% plus or minus to your local competitor, it's all about price. If you fall within that delta, then they start looking at technology, they start looking at scalability, because you've got to manage these networks for 10 years. Other than that, it's going to be looking at the best technology that's the most cost-effective way of doing it. So those are really the big changes at a high level. So from a detailed category, all tax eligible that meets performance benchmarks, and I've got a whole slide that really goes over what these latest changes are. As I mentioned, only cost per location counts. Stakeholder engagement is no longer required. Labor, DEI, climate rules are removed. So it does make, if you haven't put together an application, it does make it a lot easier writing it. So we don't have to have the DEI aspect of this. We don't have to look at the climate aspect per link or per fiber path. It will streamline the process for us.
Gotcha. And what does the shift to tech neutral framework really mean to operators and for fixed wireless applicants?
Okay, it's a good question. So what that means is what you're looking at is Appendix A, and this was part of a, I want to say it was like 35, 37 page document. Really light read. So I'd certainly encourage that to anyone who wants to have a good nap or have a good solid sleep the night before. But what this is saying is it's opened the doors for 5 gig, 6 gig, and 60 gig. Under the condition.
Would that also include other millimeter wave frequencies such as 28?
Not on this aspect of it. The 28, 29, 31 were covered under the pseudo license.
They were already on there, right?
Yep. So same thing with CBRS. Anything that was pseudo licensed or light licensed was eligible under the previous rules. This opened the door a little bit. I think in particular for 6 gig, as long as it meets some corresponding conditions. So those conditions are, it has to be beam forming or beam nulling on both ends of the spectrum. So on the base station and on the subscriber end. It has to have interference mitigation technologies built into the device. It's got to have advanced non-line of sight capabilities and design considerations built into the as well. And then obviously it's got to support 100 by 20 per BSL location. So again, this does make it more effective, and we'll go back to this toolbox analogy, is in high density areas, customers they're still going to be using fiber, especially if you own the right of way or have access to some of the assets. When you move more into suburban areas or rural areas, fixed wireless makes the most amount of sense. In areas that are highly wooded, or you'd say simply there's Fresnel zone obstructions, CBRS is the best technology to leverage. You're going to be able to get through trees like no other technology out there. But if you've got clear line of sight, that opens the door to the 60 gig, that opens the door to 6 gig, and there's a host of products and solutions that are offering that for vendors.
Awesome. What about the implementation timeline?
So that is, here's a nice little slide. Now it's going to vary per state, and there's a couple states that have given indication of what they're looking to do. But according to the document, they restructured it on June 6th. The first thing that happened was those unlicensed technologies, 5 gig, 6 gig, 60 gig, the state should have reached out to you, and they should have either had a list of eligible candidates, and they're pulling this from BDC filing data, or they're reaching out via email, or they're just generally on the website saying, hey, it's your responsibility. You've got to pull your BDC information. You've got to then send us an email saying that your intent to challenge, and then you've got to substantiate and verify that corresponding information. So I'll walk through what that looks like. I get a lot of requests about that, and there still are some states that haven't completed this process.
So I definitely want to know more about each individual state, but right here I see July 4th ISP response deadline. Does that mean if you haven't responded by this point, you've literally got 2 days, 3 days?
So what the state was supposed to do is they were supposed to reach out, and then once they reached out, you had 7 days to acknowledge and then 7 days to verify. Not every state has done this, so I assume there'll be maybe a couple extensions given here, but a lot of them, I'd say at least 60%, there's information on the website, and this stuff is coming due. If it hasn't come due, it's coming due soon.
Do you have more information on the individual states? I assume most of the people here are from various states. So is there more information that you have? I know you're following this very closely.
So what I'd recommend is reach out. There's emails at the back portion of this presentation. So it's either bead@winncom.com or mine's there. Reach out to me personally or through the BEAD mail group, and all I need to know is what state, where you are, and then we can certainly look that up. It's very easy to do. Not only can we look it up, we can help you through the process. So where do you find that BDC information? It's volume 6. What do you need to do to verify? What letter do you have? So we've got some templates we could send you. We've got an Excel document that you can fill out, but we try to systematically make this easier. And what you'll hear me talk about as we go through this panel, our goal is to make a complicated process and program simple. We'll give you one point of contact through all this, and we'll help you through the challenge, through the design, and then through application, which we'll expand on later. But key things here is everything according to this initial filing needs to be done by July 6th. So until we hear different, assume that all of July and early August, states are going to start opening up pre-qualification and applications. And again, you'll have a 14-day period to be able to put all these together. Now, what I highly recommend is if you're thinking about applying, reach out, engage us now, because it does take a lot of time to put together these designs, these network designs. We've got to pull information from the state. You've got to request information from CostQuest on Tier D information. We've got to pick the right project areas, go through that several times, perform heat mapping, and that's on the fixed wireless. On the fiber, it gets even more complicated. So again, if you're thinking about applying, engage us now, engage us quickly, and then we'll help you through that entire process.
There we
Updated.
go. That's
Yep.
what I was looking for. Okay, so Indiana, July 10th, application close date, July 21st. So this is a small portion, and like you said, I assume, you know, if they're not in one of these 6 states listed, they can reach out and you'll have more information on each individual state.
Yeah, yes, please. Now, a lot of states haven't given indication. They're either still working through the challenge process or they're trying to figure out when they're going to open this. But I'd say as a general litmus, you want to be able to assume mid-July, early August. So getting your ducks in a row is imperative, I'd say.
Gotcha. And based on my understanding, the NTIA has mandated each state must now announce the challenge process using unlicensed frequencies. Deadline was initially July 6th. Can you talk specifically about what steps our customers should take to prepare for BDC challenge process and
Yeah.
what the correct procedure for declaring intent might be?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, here we go.
So here's a good slide for it. So the document portion here was an example that we did in Ohio. But the first thing we had to do is notify the Ohio broadband office of our intent to challenge, or this customer's particular intent to challenge. So with that, and this is very similar for every single state. So this literally could be recycled. But the first stage is you've got to say, yes, I am raising my hand, I'm going to challenge this. And then the second part of this is you then have to substantiate that claim. So to substantiate that claim, and it might be a little bit hard to read at the very top here, but this is kind of the format we came up with. And it's not something we just invented. This is a combination of 7 or 8 different states and a hybrid approach to that. But the first part is it's all about your BDC filing data. So you want to pull volume 6. So either talk to your coordinator or you can pull it right off the BDC site, but you want to have a list of those products. And it's got to be something that's doing at least 100 by 20 and is a 5 gig, 6 gig, or 60 gig technology. So this first part, as I'm circling here, is all BDC filing information. This right here is the verification and validation aspect of it, where what radio are you talking about? What is the frequency? What is the model number? And then based on what I was talking about previously, does it offer beam forming, beam knolling on both subscriber and at the base station end? Is there built-in interference mitigation technologies? Does this have advanced non-line of sight capabilities? And then easily enough, can it support 100 by 20? So as you're filling these out, and this is an Excel document that you would send, you're going to have all those informations of the per site. And again, you're doing this for the subscriber end, so it's all BDC information for the for your end user locations. And then in addition to this, you just take the vendor's data sheet and you attach it to it. So, and a good thing here, and I'll say as a disclaimer, you want to talk to your manufacturer partner about who is eligible. But in these particular circumstances, let's say if it's a Toronto or it's a Cambium and there's various models that are available there, you would list those out here. And again, what we can do here at Winncom is help assist you throughout the entire process.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then what support, you talk about the Winncom BEAD program, what support does that include and how would it help our customers?
Okay, great question. It's almost like you and I planned that. It was so great.
It definitely was.
It felt good though. So let me kind of walk through this. So with everything, it starts with a consultation. So this is our one-on-one type of conversation. And in there, we are trying to ascertain a couple key things. And that information allows us to move on to the next stage of this, which is the pre-engineering side. But we'll want to know, where are you in the process? Did you already apply? Or are you thinking of applying based on the new rule changes? So just kind of getting and understanding your mindset. Then we would want to look at, where is your existing infrastructure? What counties are you interested in? And most customers, we're talking two strategies here. You have a protect strategy and then you have an expansion strategy. And the key here, as I mentioned previously with this rule change, everything is about BSL cost, passing cost. So if you've got existing infrastructure, either towers or micropops, leveraging that gives you an advantage. You don't have to add middle mile or infrastructure or leasing costs to these grant applications. You just leverage what you have. So a lot of the applications, taking a look at your existing tower sites or micropops, figuring out what project areas and BSLs, and again, that's an acronym for broadband serviceable location, unserved or underserved locations, are eligible in that funding bucket. From their technology preferences, what have you already deployed? What's at those towers? How are those towers fed? Are they fiber fed? Are they fixed wireless? Is it millimeter wave? Is it licensed microwave? And again, all that's important because those are all reimbursable features. So let's say you're putting a cluster together at a particular tower, you've got a gigabit per second, however, now you need multi-gig. The fiber, if a fiber is there, that is reimbursable. So you can carry that cost over the duration of this contract. Or if you needed to implement, let's say, a redundant ring with millimeter wave, or you're looking dual band with licensed microwave, all that is eligible for reimbursements. So understanding what you have existing helps us plan for the future of how we can put together an application and a design that will help you win. And then looking at your individual state. What are they communicating? What are the timelines? A lot of the states that already did waive fundings have checklists, have cheat sheets, have application guides. So what we're doing in parallel for a lot of customers is think of two sides of the coin. The first is you need your network design. So it's working through all these different layers that I'll expand on in a moment. But the other one is the grant writing aspect of that, and making sure that we have all our ducks in a row. And the most important duck in that particular row is LOC, letter of credit. Now, as we all know, working with banks isn't the easiest thing in the world, and they aren't the quickest. So a letter of credit essentially is a requirement at a federal level and a state level. It's 25% of the grant application. So using simple math, if your grant was $1 million, you've got to have either personal money or money with the bank, mutual fund, or a performance bond of $250,000. Now, that doesn't mean you necessarily have to use it. The next aspect of that is match. And most states do allow for in-kind contributions, which we can certainly go into detail. I could send a whole presentation on that. But the key here is for us to understand where you are, to understand where your state is, and to set this up where we've got the highest probability of success. Now, after we go through that initial call, towards the latter end, we're going to look at those counties you've mentioned, and we're going to start to, I like analogies here, we're going to start to unpeel the onion. So we've got two really unique programs here. The first one allows us to take a look at unserved, underserved locations. At a high level, it'll just give you the total, and then you can drill down to the BSLs. But we also can look at competition in that particular area. Now, again, the key is picking the right project areas. We've got a proprietary QGIS database that lets us take us a step further. So once we identify the relative area, we then can start looking at existing technology. Is there fiber in your backyard? Do you have an MSO? Is there a DSL connection? Does someone own a PAL license? Is there CBRS that's under GAA? We can see that information from our system. We can also look, see if there's previous funding vehicles. Was there RDOF? So an example here, it was, I think, West Virginia, Upshur County, where we had CBRS in the middle of it, and then we had a previous funding vehicle. But again, we're trying to help you pinpoint the best areas to target, either as protection or for expansion. So once we have that general sense, it moves on to that next step. So that next step would be collecting information from yourself. That would be getting the GPS coordinates for your tower sites. That would be getting the CostQuest Tier D license for the counties that you've identified. And then we can pull stuff from the state sites. We pull the BSL information. We pull the community anchor locations, which again, it has to have a gigabit per second capacity. So what you're seeing in this particular example is the T's are obviously tower locations. We start with just a radius of 7 miles, just gives us a litness from our first pass of what this looks like. The green sections are eligible BSL locations, and the white are community anchor. We then layer in each one of these are project areas. So when we start, there's project areas throughout the entire county. And this first pass, we want to eliminate project areas. Now, the key thing is for each application, for 9 out of 10 states, they have to be contiguous, means they have to touch. If they don't touch, it means you have to have a completely separate application. So we'll work with you on this design to come up with what your first pass looks like. Now, again, we'll pull the county lines, which is what you're seeing here. The PAU or PFSA, every state's a little bit different, but it's the project area, community anchors, BSLs. But again, this gives us our protection and expansion strategies. Now, from there, we go one of two directions. If we're talking about fixed wireless access, internally, and Kyle can spend a little bit of time talking about this, we've got the ability to perform heat map analysis. So we'll have a legend on the side of this. We can see the RSI implementations for each one of these BSLs, but we're looking at the tower and the coverage area. So we're able to give you with fairly definitive certainty what these links are going to produce. On the fiber side, we have a really interesting program. It's AI generated, but you plug in a couple of variables, you say aerial versus burial, you start looking at what your subscription plan is for min versus max, about 10 other questions. But what this will do is it will plot the most optimal route for fiber. So you upload the BSL locations into this, upload the community anchor locations, and I can see my fiber routes and I can see my drop locations. It also gives me the ability to put together a 10-year pro forma. So it shows me costs and expectation based on those service plan levels. So whether you're doing fixed wireless, whether you're doing fiber, or like a lot of our customers, that hybrid between both of them, we've got the ability to completely turnkey this engineering and design service. So what this shows you is once we have that network. The first pass allowed us, and let's just talk about fixed wireless for a second. The first pass allowed us to determine the key areas. The second pass, we performed the heat map analysis. And then from there, let's say that everything is aligned and that's the final design. We take that final design and we put together a complete product eco-center. Now, I'll expand on this a little bit later in this conversation, but everything on this list falls in two categories. It's either BABA certified on the fiber side, it's made in the United States, 55% of the components are here, final assembly's here. So if it's an XGS PON solution from Nokia, or if it's an OSP, aerial, burial, conduit, all that has to be BABA along with the corresponding fiber adjacent accessories. On fixed wireless, they made it a little bit easier. They have a waiver wire exemption for telecom. So the radios, the antennas, the power systems, and some of the enclosures are all included in this. So anything that we put together for you for these BEAD applications is certified. And that's going to become really important when you're doing your grant submissions, especially for reimbursement. But what we're showing here is an example of a complete turnkey solution. So for the base stations to the subscriber modules, to the software upgrades, to the breakout boxes, to the power battery backup systems, the site routers, the enclosures, even looking at what your cost is for your installation of your base stations and subscriber units, what your cost is to maintain existing towers or to add new tower sites. If we've got to add middle mile connectivity via licensed microwave or millimeter wave, all that is eligible for reimbursement, and all this essentially is what we'll upload to the portal for grant writing, and I'll talk about more about that in a moment. Same thing on the fiber side. So any direction, we have that ability to completely turnkey. One last thing to mention, it's this section I'm circling here, is we can offer pre-engineering services on fiber solutions. So if it's OSP fielding, if it's desktop analysis, we can do high level, low level designs, permitting per foot, splicing matrix, and even PE stamp drawings. All that is offered, and we can put boots on the ground in all 50 states. We have a host of national and regional fiber contractors. So if you're new to fiber and you don't have those installation experience, we could recommend 1 or 2 partners in your area, and essentially they put together proposals. It's a pass through on our end, but you're going to need this as part of the grant writing application. So again,
yeah, Alex, the grant writing is definitely a big piece of this. Can you walk us through Winncom's grant writing assistance program? I know you said you were going to talk about it. Is now a good time? Perfect. Yeah. That's good timing.
Yeah, perfectly syncs up. So our grant writing assistance program. So we put together a grant writing assistance program because we had a lot of customers that, for lack of a better word, it's hard to spend $60,000 to $100,000 on something that's a question mark. They weren't sure of how this would be graded, how it related, especially on the fixed wireless end, to fiber, if they would have fair competition, what the government was going to do. So we had initially an internal grant writer. Now we can still offer this particular service, and that grant writer can turnkey the entire application. We've got association partners with people like BGE, which offers a lower cost with a back end. But our program really came into play from our, I don't say willingness, but we really wanted to make a difference for customers like yourself, to streamline this entire process and to make it simple. So the grant writing assistance program is based on, lack of a better word, putting skin in the game for both of our ends. So typically it's about 30 hours to do an application. Typically it's about 20 hours to do pre-qualification. It's $500 per hour. However, 75% of that goes back onto your account, win or lose, as a product credit. And that can be used for anything in our product portfolio. So this is our willingness to back your play, to put together a program, and to try to give you the tools to help you not only pick the right areas, but successfully put together grant applications. And what that would be is, I'll give you an example. So the first part of this essentially would be giving us access as a consultant. We sit down and let's say there's 90 questions. We start reviewing every single question, and then we assign stakeholders. So this is a give and take, a one-on-one type of thing. So it would be me partnered with an individual on your end, and we would start to fill out these applications, upload the corresponding information, but it would be putting together the narratives, the budget, and the analysis, the technology overview, everything that you need to successfully submit these applications. And again, that's 75% reimbursement. Now, we've done 13 applications to date, which unfortunately I will have to redo. Space is filling up. So again, time is of the essence. So if you are thinking about applying, please reach out and let's at least start with that one-on-one consultation where we can understand what you're trying to do and talk more in detail about how we can help you succeed.
All right, Alex, let's talk a little bit about the equipment again. So which FWA vendors are now considered BEAD eligible, and how does that compare to what was previously BEAD? Okay, so this is the previous BEAD eligibility.
Yep. So let's start there first. So this is where priority broadband was fiber. So
Yep.
we still offer this. This is the BABA certification. This is the turnkey here. So Nokia would be one of our strategic partners where they have an XGS PON type of solution. So this is the ONTs, the OLTs. It would be their core and their peering routers. And then they even have professional maintenance and maintenance services that are eligible for reimbursement. When you look at your OSP fiber, it could be Superior Essex, it could be AFL Technologies, it could be Light Links, but
So
we have
all of this is still at play here, right? And we talked about it earlier on.
nothing's changing in this particular level.
Okay.
And then as I mentioned, pre-engineering of fiber contractors, and then fixed wireless, what was allowed previously was CBRS. CBRS and the corresponding power systems, the breakouts, and then they allowed middle mile technology, which would be like your 80 gig E-band for 10 gig capacity, and then your licensed microwave 611 1823. Now they also allowed for last mile LMDS, and Kyle, you mentioned this previously, where it could be, give an example, would be intercom solution of 29, was it 30 and 31?
Yeah, 28.
28.
28's different because it's owned by one of the major carriers and there's pieces and parts, but it is available in some areas.
So based on your unique requirements, Intercom offers a really unique way of doing multi-gig capacity. We've got multiple solutions for CBRS as well that would be eligible. So based on locations, topology, density, we can help choose that right application. Now, what's changed, and this was that part of that restructuring notice, and I kind of teed this up in the very beginning, but this now allows for other technologies, 5 gig, 6 gig, and 60 gig. And again, the key here is it has to fit these corresponding requirements. So beamforming, beam nulling on both subscriber and base station and interference mitigation and advanced non-line of sight capabilities. So I would say, just as a disclaimer for us, check with that corresponding manufacturer to fine tune and to confirm compliancy. But
On
just
product and model numbers, right? Frequency,
yep.
model number, to make sure that you're choosing what's most economical and in your best favor.
Yes, absolutely. And then we can obviously help with that endeavor with choosing the right solution. But again, I think it's a combination. It's if everything's about price, it's looking at the right vendor, the right technology, and it's most likely, in my experience with these applications, a combination of multiple things.
Yeah, and the idea here is to bring the cost per passing down but still maintaining your ability for, and we'll talk about it towards the end, the post-award compliancy. You know, you don't want to, you know, put up a device that can only serve, you know, 200 subscribers, or, you know, build out a tower and there's potentially 400, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of the thing is the adherence to network for best practices and understanding that congestion losses and so forth. As stated here in Appendix A.
Yep, not perfectly stated. So post-award compliancy, I think you teed it up pretty well there, Tom. So we use a partner, Widelity, and this is also who we would use for internal grant writing. If customers are looking for someone to complete turnkey everything without getting involved, they do a fantastic job. They've done billions of dollars of applications, but where we really use them is this post-award compliancy. So we bring them into the end of these conversations right when we're putting together the final budget narratives. So for a percentage of the total application, what Widelity will offer is a complete turnkey post-award compliancy. So they'll make sure that they're doing all the reimbursement submissions, they'll deal with all the KPIs and requirements that are associated to this. Every state too is going to be a little bit different on how they're requiring you to fill this out. But the big key here is this is an absolute full-time job. So it gives you the ability to really understand what are those requirements look like at your individual state level, and then it gives you the ability to have an educated decision of, is this something I want to do internally? Do I have to hire someone? Do I have to retask one of my existing team members, or do I want to just completely outsource this? Now, this is completely reimbursable through outsourcing, and as long as your state allows for in-kind contributions, if you leverage an internal employee or hire someone exclusively for it, they're obviously able to add their salary to the reimbursement aspect of this.
But what Widelity is, I mean, they're an expert at this, right? I mean, that would be the advantage here. They're familiar with it.
I would highly recommend Widelity. This part's a pain, and you want to make sure money doesn't get clawed back. And quite honestly, you're going to be spending your time building the networks. It's 100% reimbursable. My recommendation is to add this as part of your application. But again, we'll give you the details for you to make that educated decision.
Right. And I want to talk about the importance of building the network. I'm going to drop a little shameless plug in here for the Winncom engineering team and our stocking logistics. I think it's an important note. So I would say recently, but it's really been over the last 2 or 3 years, Winncom engineering has helped in, you know, some fairly large deployments by doing staging, pre-configuration. It essentially allows you to green light sites with contractors without rolling out integration teams. We'll bring the equipment into our engineering facility. We'll open it up, we'll label it, we'll upgrade the firmware, we'll load whatever configuration parameters that the customer has, you know, negotiated or talked about. We will label per site, provide you a cut list, and then we will onboard it, right, from our warehouse, and then it's shipped out. Your contractor receives it at the dock. It's labeled with the site name, alpha sector, beta sector, gamma, delta, whatever, depending on your deployment strategy. It allows you to go a little faster. At the end of the day, you need to hit those milestones in order to, you know, start the reimbursement process. So I definitely highly recommend you reach out and discuss, see how we can help you go a little faster in the field. So that's, I just wanted to throw that in there.
So just real quick, can you also just add a little bit about our capabilities from engineering and design for middle mile and for last mile?
Yeah, Winncom's been doing engineering for almost 30 years on wireless design, whether it's point-to-point, point-to-multi-point, Wi-Fi, even some low-band stuff, DAS. Very capable, very wide range tool set from, you know, path loss to Cyrodiil to A-Tool, I mean, IB Wave, list goes on. So it's something we're very familiar with. The difference here and some of what we're doing now is we're correlating that to BSLs, right? So, but Winncom's very familiar with doing outdoor RF design.
And again, it gives a single point of contact through your salesperson here at Winncom, and then we've got a team of people built around this. So there's a BEAD team that will help on the pre-engineering aspect of this, on the grant writing. We've got Kyle and his team for the engineering design for last mile, middle mile on fiber. So again, we're able to provide that in complete solution, and then the product eco center from supply and logistics as well. I know we're running out of time here, so I just want to quickly just talk about one quick thing. Everything that we're going to position, recommend, we will provide, and this is an example for Intercom, but for those that fall under the waiver wire, when you go into the reimbursements, we have from each one of those vendors that we specify, for the radio side of the house, from the power side, the antenna side, each one of those vendors have their BEAD waiver and compliance. So again, not only do we help you build out the solution, but we'll make sure you're ready for the compliancy piece of it. I would also recommend, if you haven't, our BEAD portal, where we have a lot of our panel discussions are on here. A lot of these are vendor-based. A lot of these are just talking about open technologies. BEAD eligible products are there. We'll have more of the state funding information as they become available, but a fantastic resource, a free resource that we offer to you. And then the last thing, as I mentioned, if you're thinking about doing this, please reach out either to myself, acernic@winncom.com. We've got a BEAD general mail stop, but let's start with that first one-on-one consultative conversation and let us figure out how we can best position you for success. So I think we've got 10 minutes to spare. Do we have any questions, anything that we can address?
We do have quite a few questions on Doc. I believe a couple of these you've probably covered, but I'll just run through them.
Can you ask in a true or false fashion, if that would be okay with you?
Sure. Okay. To clarify, 5,000 cost per customer as a sort of threshold of the whole project cost. Is that correct?
On the fiber side, yes. So I'd say that's a good litmus, and anything above that, you want to consider fixed wireless. It varies, but your total cost in fixed wireless is usually somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000. So if our only litmus to success here, and success is having an accepted application, is cost, I would say $5,000 is a great place to start. And if you've already looked at a fiber network, just do a quick analysis per passing, call that to our attention, and then we can certainly sit down and have a conversation of what are some alternative ways to keep that cost down with your application.
Very nice. And do you believe Starlink will win a lot of the funding?
I knew that one was going to come up. I think they're going to win some of it. I can give some examples, and I do think that Starlink is a fit in some different places. So I've done applications in Arizona and West Virginia, New Mexico, where some of these project areas, they're pretty spread out. And if you're in high density areas, obviously fiber makes sense. When you come more rural, fixed wireless. But if you don't have infrastructure, either towers or micropops, and you've got large project areas with only a handful of BSLs, it's not going to be cost effective. So in those circumstances, yes, absolutely. I think satellite and LEO technology fits, and it's the right solution. Now, if you looked at some of the examples, I think Louisiana, they came in around $10,000 a passing because they do have to support their satellite systems, which I believe they refresh every 5 years. I think there are some limitations in regards to bandwidth on high density areas, but I don't see them taking a large chunk of it. I think fixed wireless is primed and positioned, but I do think in some of these instances, there's opportunities for all three technologies. And again, I come back to just reach out to us and we can help you kind of review and figure out what makes the most amount of sense.
Okay. Do BSLs need to be continuous across the fixed wireless application footprint?
So I'm going to guess that question is, do project areas need to be contiguous, and do they all have to be the same technology? So rephrasing, if that's not the question, just shoot me an email and I can get into more detail. But most states are requiring for contiguous project areas. So they have to touch. If they don't touch, you can still file it, but you'll have to have a second application. So that's part A of that. Part B is you can mix and match technologies. You could do fixed wireless and fiber in LEO. You could do 5 gig, 6 gig in CBRS. The only litmus is you have to have a strategy for that entire project area. A lot of the states are allowing for a 10% delta. So if you can't serve 10% of the application, again, this is going to have to be part of the narratives. You'll have to specify what project areas, BSLs you can't and why. But again, some of these areas are really challenging.
Alex, just to confirm, if let's say somebody's a particular project area and they want to do fiber where they have the density, they want to use that infrastructure to build out fixed wireless, that's part of one application, right? It's not one application per technology. They can do the hybrid approach as long as the project area is contiguous.
Said perfectly. Yes.
All right, perfect. Just making sure, because
Yep.
I think there's probably quite a few people that are looking at it like that. They're able to actually build the infrastructure where the density makes sense on fiber and maybe hit that 5K and then build out from that and really lock in their footprint.
Yes. Yes. True. See, I did it.
Yes.
What are the general terms of engagement for your grant engineering and writing service, and how is it reimbursable?
Uh-oh, I think Alex froze.
Yeah, I think we froze.
I'll answer it. The best way is reach out to.
Well, some states aren't doing pre-qual. They're just doing letters of intent. We've done a couple of those already. So obviously no cost for any of that. Applications are about 30 hours if we're starting from scratch. If someone already submitted an application, obviously it's much, much less. It's just tweaking some of the budget aspect of it and the technical narratives and commenting a little bit differently on some of the project areas. But let's assume you're doing 30 hours times 500, so it's 15 grand. 75% is reimbursable. So I don't have a calculator, but I think it's like 3,700 would be your cost. The rest sits on your account as a product credit. And it's on the account that can be used for anything. And it doesn't have to be BEAD related. It could be anything in our solution catalog. But again, our goal is we're a distributor. That's our core competency, and everything else that we've talked about today is based on how do we try to enable our customers' success.
Okay, well, being a distributor, can you name some key 60 gigahertz vendors?
So again, this is part where you want to reach out to those corresponding vendors as well, because they need to meet those criteria. And the criteria has to be beamforming, beam nulling on both the base station and subscriber, advanced interference mitigation technologies, non-line of sight capabilities. But I would say, top of my head, I would have a conversation with Cambium. I believe it's the CN Wave product, I think would fit in that particular bucket. I would have a conversation with Cambium on 5 gig and 6 gig. I believe it's the EPMP 4500, 4600. And then same thing with Tirana on 5 gig and 6 gig is their G1 platform. Their G1 platform is eligible.
Alex,
So,
that's a very careful answer to that question, but as an engineer, I can tell you that 60 gigahertz does not do non-line of sight. So we definitely need to, bring some further clarification to that. And just listening around the industry, I know a lot of people are going to are going to be going or attempting to bid with 60 gigahertz as well as 3, 5, and 6 as well. So we definitely need to understand the states and what that recommendation looks like. And I believe most of the manufacturers are working directly with the NTIA to get those waivers. That exactly what you showed. So I think it's going to be very interesting as we navigate through this together.
And Kyle makes a great point. As soon as we have official sign off from each one of our corresponding manufacturer partners, we'll obviously share that. And the example I had was that intercom slide. We'll have that for all the eligible technologies. But our goal here is to simply put you into the best technology that gives you the highest probability of success. That's my diplomatic way of answering that question.
That's correct.
Yes. Would construction of small client towers be included in the cost to get to service to clients?
Yes, absolutely. So there is a DOC de minimis waiver that's associated to this. So it's either 10% of the total cost for $1 million, whatever's lower. But that allows for a couple things. So let's say that you're putting up a Rhone or a Trilon tower, self-supporting, obviously that is completely reimbursable, along with the site infrastructure that's corresponding to it. If you did non-pens or standoffs, all that falls under the infrastructure aspect of it. So all those are reimbursable. If you were leasing a tower from, I don't know, American Tower or someone like that, those leasing costs are reimbursable. If a tower is fiber fed and you've got a lease agreement with company ABC, you can incorporate that over 10 years.
So
Same thing.
I think what the question was kind of asking, and I know from a lot of experience in the industry, you typically run your coverage at 15 to 20 feet high, right? But in the past, we've dropped poles in people's yards or on the edge of their property in order to get them service. Would that pole or that structure added?
That pole would be considered as infrastructure and it would be eligible. Okay. Same thing if you need to construct towers.
I believe that's kind of the approach that question was guided around.
Yes, and they just confirmed that it was.
Okay.
We still have a few more questions to get through. I know we're running short on time. What is the max grant and will you be making the slides available?
Yes, I will be making the slides available. So that's an easy one. You'll get an email from Dawn and our marketing team, most likely tomorrow. So the slides will be there along with a copy, I think a YouTube video of this presentation, along with a link of how to contact us. What was the other part of the question? Sorry.
What is the max grant?
There isn't one. Well,
I'm going to say an asterisk because each state only has so much money, allocated. So right, you can't exceed that. But if somebody was that adventurous, that would be entertaining.
Yeah, I would encourage whoever wants to have the max. Maybe we can make it a competition. But I would say the one thing you want to look at is that letter of credit. It's got to be you've got to secure either with your bank, either with private funds or a performance bond 25% of it. So whatever you're going for, there has to be secured funds allocated, and that's usually one of the litmuses that we use of determining the project size.
Well, when they've already spent billions of dollars over the last few years, why is the government now doing this in such a short window?
That's a great question.
That's it.
I don't know. I have no answer. To make me work 20 hours a day. I have no idea.
Okay, we'll move on then.
Yeah. Ask that question to your local congressman. Yes.
Yes. Originally, BABA rules explicitly prohibited using BEAD funds to purchase products manufactured in China used to build their fiber infrastructure. Unlicensed fixed wireless products are mostly manufactured in China. So will BABA waiver be allowed to for unlicensed fixed wireless products manufactured in China?
Well, I'm gonna, Alex, I'll let you give a statement, but a lot of manufacturers in the FWA world have moved manufacturing out of China. Some of the components may be in China, but or sourced from China and then maybe go to Taiwan or somewhere else. So the FWA market has kind of moved away from that, your Wi-Fi. And I think that was a big contingency plan or play during the BEAD, the original BEAD BABA compliance waivers. But if you remember, Wi-Fi got some sort of waiver. I expect we're going to see waivers from a lot of different manufacturers, and Alex is obviously more up to speed on that, but Alex, go ahead. But some of those moved out of China for that reason, but go ahead, Alex.
So I think you hit the nail on the head. So I'd say my answer is two parts. One is it can't be manufactured in China. Components can be, but final assembly cannot be. So that has not changed. So to be eligible for the waiver, it has to be manufactured somewhere else. The other part of that question is if you're looking at the ability to do beam knolling, beam steering, beam forming at both ends of the spectrum, interference mitigation, non-line of sight, there's only a handful of products to do that. So that also really narrows the stage on what is going to be allowed. So I think as each vendor fills out and gets the waivers approved, I think there's only going to be, top of my head, 2 players that are going to be able to do this.
Well, this next one's a good question. In round 1, fiber network designs were required to be certified by a professional network engineer. Unlicensed fixed wireless networks aren't regulated or scrutinized to the degree that fiber networks are. So for this new round, will WISPs be required to also have their network design certified by a professional engineer?
I don't know that I can put this. I actually ran into this yesterday. Well, I've known about it since June 5th. If I put something in the chat, can it be read by all the participants?
No.
Yeah. No. Okay.
Okay.
We can include that on our communication out though.
So
are you talking
I
about
just put something in the chat. Can that be read by everybody? I don't know if that pasted into the actual chat. No. All right. I'll send the text file to Alex. Alex, actually, I sent it to you yesterday.
Yeah, I
Did
have
you
it. I'll
specify
get it
to
to Dawn. She can get it out.
You'd have to specify that it goes to the entire audience.
Oh, perfect. Give me one
but,
second.
Yeah.
It's a brief overview, but basically there's 3 if-ands, right? A corporate officer possessing a bachelor's of science degree in engineering who has direct knowledge of responsibility of the carrier's network design and construction. 2, an engineering possessing a bachelor or postgraduate degree in electrical engineering, or similar technical discipline, and at least 7 years of relevant experience in broadband network design. Or 3, an employee or agent with specialized training relevant to broadband network engineering, design, deployment, and performance, and at least 10 years of relevant experience in broadband network engineering, design, and performance. Technically, a lot of you guys will be able to self-certify.
Yep.
So I have a little bit of heartburn over this because, you know, if we design it and you don't implement it to the design, that creates a little bit of an issue. Most of the customers that we've worked with so far have a ton of experience deploying broadband. That's what they're good at. They're good at building networks. What they don't have the specialty is, you know, a lot of times the letter of credit, raising the capital, the grant writing, and I think that's where we really help. But Alex, please share that document when you send the slides out. The document I shared with you yesterday from June 5th. And that way they have that information. So yes and no. The PE thing is a thing, but there's some ifs ands around that now.
And then we do have a partner through Next Gen Engineering. So if you don't have those capabilities, we do have a way to offer that. So again, we'll provide the details. If you've got additional questions, reach out.
We'll make sure to include that in the email going out. I have just 2 more quick questions. One is, does Winncom support throughout the entire process?
Yes, from the entire process, from consultation to engineering and design to grant writing and support. And then again, we even have post-war compliancy. So it gives
As
us,
well as post installation support. We can even do on-site installation support if needed. Train contractors. We're very familiar with a lot of almost every bit of equipment we've deployed in our lab.
yep. And then we can site kit things, deliver product when and where you need it from a logistics perspective. But yes, our goal here is to turnkey the entire experience.
Not white glove, turnkey. Make sure we don't do the installation portion.
All right, well, last question, gentlemen. Is there a support structure price model with a short window for responses? Is there a dedicated team for that?
Yes, there's a dedicated team, and I like bourbon, so that would be no, there is no cost for it. The only cost associated to it's grant writing for pre-qualification and for application. The design is part of Winncom's value-added service.
Wonderful, thank you, gentlemen.
Awesome. Well, I want to say thank you for everyone who's taken the time, especially those who've gone over by 9 minutes. We'll have the slides will go out tomorrow, the YouTube video will go out tomorrow, and then the document that Kyle referenced about PE drawings. And then I really can't say this enough, but timing is really of the essence. So engage us as quickly as you can, and we're here to help. So I certainly appreciate everyone's time, and I look forward to having a more in-depth conversation. Kyle, thank you too, by the way.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to you both, and I hope everyone else has a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, guys.